Hello, I'm Dave and this is Logan, out once again for a walk in the countryside. Thanks for joining us. Now today we're at a place called Old Sarum in Wiltshire, the now ruined and deserted site of the earlier settlement of Salisbury, and it's situated on a hill 2 miles north of the modern city of Salisbury. And we're going to be walking a roughly 4.5 mile route. We'll have an exploration around the remains of Old Sarum before dropping down into the valley on the other side, checking out a church, crossing the River Avon and following its course to the outskirts of Salisbury before heading back through Stratford Sub Castle. Now I'm filming at the end of November. It's a bitterly cold day. It's about 1 or 2 degrees. Logan's got his thick winter coat on and I'm well wrapped up. But the sun is out. There's plenty of blue sky. Should be perfect conditions for walking. Do come along with us. Well, I've parked my car at the car park here at Old Sarum. I think it's £3 all day, although it's for members of English Heritage it's free. Well, before we have a quick wander around the remains of the Hillfort here, I need to tell you about something to the north. In fact, just before I parked in the car park, I drove down the A345 main Salisbury to Amesbury Road just to check something out. Now, if you look on an Ordnance Survey map, you'll see Gun End of Base Monument. And there is indeed a monument there. It was erected in 1967. It's difficult to read. It says, in 1794, a line from this site to Beacon Hill was measured by Captain W. Mudge of the Ordnance Survey as a base for the triangulation of Great Britain. So what's it all about? Well, William Mudge, who was second lieutenant in the Royal Artillery, was Ordnance Survey's second most senior official in its early years. And in the late 18th century there were fears of a French invasion and the authorities wanted to map the south coast of England. Well, Mudge began his survey of the west of England from this very spot, and he buried a cannon pointing upwards to mark the trig point rather than wooden sticks or a stone cairn. And if you can see just in front of me there indeed is the buried cannon, or the top bit. Now, although measuring using the theodolite had started earlier, the first definitive mapping survey of the country really began here. And from here he measured the distance to Beacon Hill, which is over to the east of Amesbury, about 11 kilometres from here. And he used metal chains. He then took the measurement of the angle and elevation between Beacon Hill and 2 other distant points. I could go on, but well, using trigonometry, he was able to determine the exact positions of those 2 points, and then he was able to work out the next triangle. Well, as I say, it's got nothing really to do with the walk, but it's a little bit of history, so I thought I'd point it out to you anyway. Okay, let's warm up a bit by kicking on with the walk. Well, let me tell you a little bit about the history of the place. There was a prehistoric settlement here, but it really started to develop around about 400 BC when an Iron Age hill fort was built, and it was oval shaped with a double bank and ditch with an entrance on the eastern side. It covers about 30 acres, and the Atrebates were the British tribe here when the Romans invaded. So the Romans took over in the 1st century. Indeed, it's at the junction of numerous roads, and I think some still show on the map. And certainly many major routes seem to pass by here. Now, Cynric, King of Wessex, captured the castle in 552 AD, but the Saxons largely ignored the place. That was until the Vikings started to invade, and then they repaired the fortifications pretty sharpish, but it was abandoned in 1003. The Normans, however, rather liked it, and they built a motte and bailey castle here in 1069, and followed by erecting a magnificent cathedral between 1075 and 1092. Indeed, the Domesday Book may well have been presented to William I here at Old Sarum in 1086, when he was here for a meeting of landowners who had to swear an oath of loyalty to the king. I think it was called the Oath of Salisbury. But during the medieval period, there were issues living up here. I mean, it's very exposed, and lack of fresh water, and the fact that being surrounded by a wall made it feel like a castle rather than a city or a big town. And there was a dispute between the Sheriff of Wiltshire and the Bishop of Salisbury. And in 1220, the foundation stone was laid for a new cathedral further south, and a settlement quickly evolved around that. The new cathedral was finished in 1258. But the settlement at Old Sarum basically declined, and eventually the whole place was abandoned. The castle was demolished completely in 1322. And Henry VIII sold the castle grounds in 1514, and it became a rotten borough. We'll be talking about that later on. Well, these days the whole place is owned by the Secretary of State for, I think it's Culture, Digital, Media and Sport, and it's run by English Heritage. Well, you certainly get some great views from up here. So this is looking over to the north. So just to show you what there is up here, on the right hand side there, that's the old, well, the remains of the old castle. You have to pay to go in there, but the rest of the areas that are outside the castle is free to look around. There are sort of public footpaths. So this is looking to the north, and then, well, there's the remains of the old cathedral, and then this is looking over to the west. Of course, the trees pretty much lost all their leaves now, and what few are remaining are brown and golden, of course. And this is on the southern side, and the sort of castle would have been on the top of the mound there. It's quite an impressive fortification, that's for sure. Superbly positioned at the top of the hill. Oh, what a view looking to the south. I'm conscious I'm pointing directly towards the sun, so it's very hazy, but dominating the city of Salisbury there is Salisbury Cathedral with its spire. Is it 404 foot high? Which I think makes it the tallest church spire in the UK since 1561. Well, up here at Old Sarum we get a great view of our next destination down in the valley below to the southwest. That's Stratford Sub Castle, or Stratford as I think it was originally known. And it was a sort of separate village, but really since 1954 it's been considered a northern suburb of the city of Salisbury. Well, we've certainly had a lot of fun exploring Old Sarum, so we're now going to start heading in a sort of southwesterly direction downhill. Well, we've made our way to Stratford Sub Castle, and the first thing we'll look at is this delightful church, the Church of St Lawrence. Now, its date of foundation is uncertain. It was first mentioned in 1228 as a chapel annexed to St Martin's in Salisbury. It was consecrated in 1326, but that could have been a rebuilt church replacing an earlier one. Much of the stone used for this church was probably from the old abandoned buildings at Old Sarum. And it's got a nave. I think the walls are from the 15th century, but it was all rebuilt in the 16th century. A chancel. I think the arch between the nave and the chancel dates to the 14th century. A west tower that was rebuilt in 1711 and a south porch. And there was a big restoration in 1904 and again in the 1950s. I think it's got 6 bells. It's interesting, the actual church is a little way from the centre of the old village, possibly originally close to an old crossing point of the River Avon. We'll see the river shortly. Fascinating clock outside. It's one of those one-handed ones, and it dates the 18th century, although I believe the dial was actually replaced in 2019. Well, I'll have a little peep inside. Oh, nice to get in out of the cold. There's the organ at the top above a wooden gallery, and there's the font. Now I think that could date to the 12th century. And just making my way through the nave, looks like that's the bust of St Lawrence over there. And then making my way towards the chancel, there's the pulpit. Oh, quite magnificent, isn't it, with the stairs leading up. And then just walking through into the chancel itself with looks like wooden panelling at the far end and a splendid stained glass window above the altar. What a beautiful church. And there, just almost opposite the church, is the old reading room that originally was built in 1881, and it's obviously had refurbishment since. Well, this is an interesting building. It's called Mawarden Court, and it dates from the 16th century. It's had alterations in 1710 and then in the 19th century. Originally it was the manor house, and there were barns, stables and gardens here, but by 1793 the manor house had been separated from the grounds. And Thomas Pitt bought the house in 1690. He was the grandfather of William Pitt the Elder, who was born here. Well, we're now going to head down Mill Lane. Look at this house here, Old Sarum view. It dates to the early 17th century. It was refurbished, I think, in 1703, and it was a post office and stores and shop until 1992. little update on the route. We've left Stratford Sub Castle, headed down Mill Lane. I think that may well be the old mill house through those trees. Not 100% sure, but there's certainly been mills around here since the 11th century. And as you can see, we've just crossed over the River Avon, 65 miles long. It's got a couple of sources. The western arm rises east of Devizes and the eastern arm rises east of Pewsey, and the two arms meet up at Avon to the north of Salisbury, and the river flows out to sea at Christchurch. A gorgeous swan out there. And of course, something like 5 rivers go through or by Salisbury. I mean, you've got the Avon, you've got the River Nadder, which comes in from the west, the River Wiley that comes in from the northwest and joins up with the Nadder, and then the River Bourne, which comes in from the northeast, and the River Ebble, which comes from the west and joins the Avon just south of the city. Well, this would not be a good day for a dog dip, I would have thought. It's going to be freezing in there. Maybe a drink. Oh, don't go any deeper, you get your coat wet. Good boy. Well, we're now on the southern side of the River Avon, heading in a sort of southwesterly direction to Salisbury on something known as the Pewsey Avon Trail, which is a long distance footpath that goes from Pewsey to Salisbury. I think it was created in 2010. Well, we're starting to get some really good views of Salisbury Cathedral as we get closer to the city. I mean, its spire really does dominate the skyline, that's for sure. So this little area here is all part of the Avon Valley Nature Reserve, managed by the Wiltshire Wildlife Trust. Very peaceful it is too. Well, a bit of a problem. Looks like there's some sort of development going on here. I was hoping to cross the river somewhere around here. I think I'm going to have to do a little divert further south before I can actually cross the river. Well, there you go. Looks like there's some sort of construction in progress, delivering flood risk, environmental amenity and regeneration. So we've done a divert, we're back on the route. Well, this is as far south as we're going on the route, right at the edge of Salisbury. We went along Ashley Road, had to do a little divert, but we're back on the route now, crossing over the river, and looks so we've just got to go by the Five Rivers Leisure Centre and start heading northwards. Interesting, the name of the road that leads to the leisure centre is called Hulse Road, and it was given that name in 1905 to commemorate Sir Edward Hulse, the 6th Baronet, who sadly committed suicide in 1903. He was the MP for Salisbury, and his family seat was at Bremer House to the south of here. Well, a little update on the route. So we're making our way northwards through Stratford Sub Castle, and this area here has obviously been quite a lot of development of housing over the last few decades. Oh, what a gorgeous cottage. I believe it dates to 1700, and it was on a key junction here. And in the late 19th century, it was actually a pub called the Bunch of Grapes, and was actually a post office right up until the 1930s. Okay, well, we're now going to leave the village and head in a sort of northeasterly direction, slightly uphill, along a track called the Portway. And it's thought that well, one of the Roman roads used to run parallel to this track to the west. Aha, now this is what I was looking for. Now if you look at a very old map, you'll see something called a Parliament tree. Now before the Reform Act of 1832 there was no uniformity of English parliamentary constituencies. At one stage each county had 2 MPs regardless of the size of county. And there were a number of different types of borough franchise, and despite having no significant population, Old Sarum was organised as a burgage borough. It was known as a rotten borough with an extremely small electorate that was vastly overrepresented and could be used by a patron to gain undue influence. In 1691, Thomas Pitt bought the manor of Stratford and Old Sarum and thus obtained control of the burgage borough of Old Sarum. Other members of the Pitt family held the seat, including Pitt the Elder and Pitt the Younger. And apparently voting always took place under an ancient tree on the southern slope of Old Sarum, known as the Parliament tree, and it survived until 1902. And you've got this stone here commemorating roughly where it was. Well folks, here we are at the end of the walk, back up at Old Sarum, the car just round the corner there. We hope you enjoyed our walk today. If you did, please do give us a thumbs up and a like, and do leave a comment, and do check out our Facebook page, Dave's Countryside Walks. We've had a super walk today. The sun's been out, it has been chilly. I see there's a Harvester restaurant just on the other side of the road there. I think we might pay a visit over there for a bowl of hot soup. So until we meet again, thanks for watching and cheerio. Good boy, sweetie. Yeah.